Hey everybody, this is Todd Linder with LaunchPoint, and I am so glad to be here with my friend Adam as we talk about his transition from ministry through multiple different jobs into the marketplace job where he is right now. He's got a really great story to share, and I think you are going to glean a lot from our time together. So, Adam, thank you so much for taking time to be with me here. And I just love for you to start off by telling us a little bit about who you are and how you got into ministry in the first place.
Yeah, man, Todd, thanks so much for asking me to come on and share my story. Yeah, I'm learning a lot through your story and through Launch Point. So I just wanted to throw that out there from the beginning and say thank you. It's been great. But yeah, so my story, my journey into ministry was a little bit. It was interesting. You know, kind of grew up in church, but thought I wanted to be a teacher and a basketball coach, and went to college and got that degree. Really got involved at a local church and was really plugged in, and honestly thought that I would have a job coming out of college, in that ministry, and it didn't work out. So I was like, okay, I was like, cool. So you know, went and did the teacher thing and coached basketball at the same time, and was at a great place and really was fantastic, but stayed plugged in the ministry, super plugged in. And throughout that year of being my first year teaching, it was kind of up and down. As a first year teacher, anybody that's has an education background, I'm sure can, understand and relate. But really throughout that year, felt like the Lord was saying, hey, I'm not done with you. I feel like ministry is still something that, I have for you. And I kind of was like, all right, God, that's cool. But I feel like teaching and coaching is that ministry that you have for me. And it was, I was able to make some great impacts and have a great, relationships with coworkers and players and families and all that, which I still have today. But yeah, I ended up throughout that year, just really feeling like, hey, ministry is where I need to be. Ministry is really where I need to be full time. Lay it all down. All these things like, hey, let's go for it. And really, opportunity came about, kind of a growth opportunity. Like, hey, come in, and you're going to learn and grow and be a part of a thriving, growing student ministry. And I was like, okay, and did it. Left. Left school after a year. Was actually going to get transferred to another school. Like, it was weird, they had two campuses, like a ninth grade and then a high school. So I was going to get transferred to the high school campus, and really kind of dive into that basketball world, but just felt like that wasn't what God was calling me to do in that season, and left and stepped into ministry full time. And yeah, it was great.
Awesome. And then as you transition into the student ministry that you're talking about, what were some of the roles that you had when you were a part of that student ministry?
Yeah, a little bit of I did a little bit of everything, but at first, I was like an executive assistant to basically the pastor over all of student ministry. So it was overseeing lots of different things, and then children's ministry got up under our wing, so it was like a family ministries deal, and I was serving as like a right hand to the director of all of that. And that's actually where you and I got connected. Our two ministries, intersected. But yeah, I mean, really learned a ton about leadership, about ministry, about growth, all these things. And then started in that realm, and then ended up kind of launching into helping start a whole new campus for that ministry. And it was really fun. I got married in the same year as I started a new campus, and so it was just a whirlwind of things. And then some things happened that were out of our control, and so we ended up shutting down that campus. And I kind of was, hey, you got two options: either you can go move 3 hours away, or go work in another campus for 30 minutes away, which is fine, doing the director of our children's ministry at that campus. And it was like, all right, well, we just got married, our family is here, probably not going to do the 3 hour away one. So chose the one close by, and just throughout that time, built some good relationships, but realized that a lot of what I was doing really wasn't filling my cup. I didn't love leading a children's ministry. I loved leading the adults that were helping lead the kids ministry, but kind of was just in this frame of mind, like, all right, God, what's next? Like, what does this look like? And throughout some conversations I've had and throughout a lot of my experience through ministry, I enjoyed the counseling side of things. I enjoyed those one-on-one conversations, coaching conversations, and decided that I wanted to go back to school and get my master's degree in counseling, but wanted to work and figure out what that could look like. So went back into education after I left ministry, getting my master's degree in school counseling. And so that's kind of what got me, I guess, back out of the ministry full time, and more into a vocational type ministry.
Okay, so you graduated from college, did high school teaching plus basketball coach for a year, decided to go into ministry, started in kind of an executive assistant role, and then moved all the way towards a director of kids ministry role at another campus. And how long was your time working in that church ministry?
Yeah, I would say, I think 3 years in total, probably 3.5 years, probably actually. So 3.5 years, man, whirlwind of a time, lots of travel, lots of, all the fun things. I mean, amazing experiences, met amazing people. But ultimately just kind of led to this crossroads of like, all right, God, is this still what you have for me? Or is there another way for me to do ministry? What does that look like? And just kind of was like, in this, I don't know. And I think, you and I have discussed it, but in this kind of guilty feeling of like,
Mm,
can I leave? Can I not leave? Like, I don't know which way this goes. And, it was a hard transition out because of 3.5 years of going at 100 miles an hour, and really just trying to figure out, all right, God, what do you have for me? And what is this? And so just seeking wisdom, seeking counsel. Is it okay to step away from full-time ministry? Is it okay? Even though I've been telling people this is what my calling is, all these things. And so I think really just had to wrestle with that and wrestle, through some wise counsel and wrestle in my own heart, like, God, what are you telling me to do? And so ultimately made that decision to step away after 3.5 years. And, it's been good since, but it was hard in the moment.
yeah. A lot of people I know, Adam, that are going to be watching this are going to be either in the process or coming into the process of trying to figure out what's next and dealing with a lot of those emotions and those feelings and questions that you
Mm.
just said. Can you dive in a little bit deeper into some of those feelings that you were having? And then you sought out counsel. And so would love to hear some of the wisdom that you received from other people that helped you as you were considering what to do next. And then you did end up making a move to go pursue something besides W-2 vocational
Yeah.
ministry, specifically in this counseling or master's of counseling.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, number one, I just give people permission to wrestle with those feelings. It's okay that you're having some of those emotions. I think it's normal. You're not weird. You're not, it feels like the biggest decision of your life, right? But ultimately, while I'm not playing down the fact that it was a big decision, but in hindsight, there's been other decisions that I've probably wrestled with a little bit harder. But at the end of the day, I think you can give yourself permission and say it's okay to have these conversations. It's okay to seek, wise counsel when you have people that have gone ahead of you. Like, hey, I see that you're in full-time ministry and now you're doing this. Like, walk me through that. How did you handle this? And asking those questions and really just normalizing some of those fears and acknowledging, like, yeah, other people have done this and it's okay. But I think the thing that really the best piece of advice that someone gave me was really just this idea of this ministry is not about you. Um, and I think that was the biggest thing that kind of hit me hard. Like I was like, oh, so you're saying this ministry is going to keep going if I, step off? Because I think I got into this place of like, oh, well, what are these people going to do without me? It's like, no, the ministry wasn't built on you to begin with. So it's okay that you're having these feelings that you may need to step away, or you feel like God's telling you, hey, go do something different. Like it wasn't about you when it started. It's not about you now, and it's not going to be about you when you leave. And so I think that was one piece of advice. I was like, oh, yeah, you're right. It's kind of like a gut check, like, okay, yeah, it's not about me. But did I add some value? Did God use me in that season? Yeah, I think so. And I think there was ways that, we're able to help lives be changed and all that, but not by me, but ultimately through God working through us, in the ministry we're in. But I think that was one of the things that just hit home with me, is like, hey, just a reminder, it's not about you. And so I think that gave me some freedom to explore and be willing to say, okay, it's not about me. Maybe it is time for me to think, all right, if this is what God's calling me to, it's okay to step away.
Yeah. Three big takeaways for me there. One, you can feel those feelings, the
Mm.
tension internally. That should be something that you actually welcome and sort through and figure out, not
Yeah.
just kind of push off, because the longer you push it off, you'll still feel it. And then it'll become an unhealthy version of those feelings, especially when it gets tied up with church and spirituality and mission and all those things coming together. So, Adam, I love that you said that. Welcome it, work through it, but don't work through it alone.
Yeah.
Inviting other people in. That's one of the other big takeaways, is that you didn't do it alone. You invited other people in, specifically people who had done the exact same thing that you were trying to do before you did it.
Yeah.
And for me, I know when I talk to people in my transition from ministry into a non-ministry job, I didn't talk to that many people
Mm.
that had had that experience before,
Sure.
maybe like one or two. And that's on me. And it was a lonely experience with so many fears and so many doubts that I held on to for probably way too long,
Mm.
because I really think, looking back, because I did it alone,
Yeah.
because I didn't seek out wise counsel from people who had been in that space. It took me a while to seek out wise counsel, and eventually I got wise counsel, which helped me to overcome those things. But just being able to invite others in, and approach others that had done that before is super, super helpful
Yeah.
to your experience. So all that's I think that's really, really helpful for anybody wrestling with this. But I'd also love for you to just talk about, what were some of the factors that made you want to consider making a change, or prompted you to even think about making a change. Because when I talk to people, even messaging with someone today who feels a lot of guilt of even thinking about
Mm. Yeah.
potentially making a change. So, can you talk through some of the factors that prompted you to think about making a change in the first place?
Yeah. I think, you know, um, for me, I think it was a couple of different things. I think something that you mentioned, um, I thought I did a pretty good job. I didn't, once I had that thought of like, hey, is this really what I'm gonna do? Like is this what I'm gonna do for the next, 30 years, whatever, and when I'm newly married and trying to think through like 3 years into marriage and trying to think like, is this what we're doing? Like, okay, let's start talking through this. So my wife was a good, sounding board for me. Like, hey, let's talk through this. Like, and I think she played a big factor in it because she, saw me every day coming home. Like, I think she could just tell like I wasn't feeling as fulfilled as I think I was, and I think I was frustrated. And then the other side too, man, I think I had a really good leader in the ministry that was willing to call me out and be like, hey man, is this for you? You know, like, and it
Wow.
was really cool to see him say that. Like at the time, I was like, is he like reading my journal or something? You know, like what in the world, you know? How does he know that I'm even in thinking through this? But you know, he could just tell, like, he's like, hey man, like, you're not as engaged, you know, you're not as, you know, it seems like you're somewhere else, you know? And I was like, well, I mean, I've been thinking about this. And he's like, that's great, you know? And he's like, if that's what you feel like God's telling you to do, go for it, you know? And it wasn't like this, no, Adam, you can't. So I had a leader on the inside in the ministry that was like, man, if that's what you feel like God's telling you to do, then I think you should go do that and listen to God, you know? And I was like,
Wow.
that's weird. You know, I was like, what the world, you know? And then that's when this whole idea of, I think the ministry's not about me. And then my leader's like, yeah, dude, if that's what God's telling you to do, then you should do that. Like you should honor him and do what he says. And I was like, okay. So I'm getting affirmed by, you know, outside counsel. I'm getting, you know, affirmed by my leader at the time, my boss at the time, like, yeah, I mean, if that's what you feel like you need to do, that's what you should do. And then, you know, the one that was closest to me, my wife, she's like, hey, I just don't know. You like, doesn't seem like you're as excited to go in the morning, you know, all these things. And I told her I was all those fears and guilt and all these things I'm wrestling with. I'm like, yes, I'm wrestling with all this, you know? Um, but I think the biggest thing is, for me, it was just encouraging to hear a leader be like, hey man, I want you to do what's best for you. And I want you to step into what God is calling you to do, whether that's you work here for the next 40 years or you go do something different. Like it's okay either way with me and I'm going to support you. So that was like instant pressure, instant, you know, just feelings of stress, anxiety about even having a conversation just gone, you know, and then it
Oh,
just turned into okay, so let's walk through this. And he's like, so walk me through what you feel like you're supposed to do next. And I was like, well, I'm enjoying the counseling piece and I want to go back to school. And he's like, great. He's like, what does that look like? You know? And so having that you know, person that I can confide in, it's like, okay, cool. And then he's like, sweet. So let's figure that out. What's the timeline? What does that look like? What do you need next? You know? And so it was just really cool to work with a leader that was willing to be all in and be in my corner no matter what. So that was a unique experience that other people may not have, and I know I'm lucky and blessed to have that. But I think that was just, you know, I think that was just the results of a great culture that we had at the time. So it was really cool.
that experience relieved anxiety and it took pressure off of you to not have to worry about what other people thought or whether it would be not good
Yeah,
for them or just when you look up to somebody, you don't want to disappoint them,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And especially if they're a great leader. And man, that just makes me so happy to hear that that was your experience. And for anyone who is a ministry leader
mm,
and you have people underneath you,
yeah,
I'm just gonna say this right now. If you have people that who are underneath you who might be leaving, empower them to follow God's call. Don't make it weird.
yeah,
Don't make it weird for them to listen to the voice of God in their life. If you hired them because you believe that they were aligned with your values and could hear
mm,
the voice of God to work out the ministry vision that you have, that voice doesn't go away just because
yeah,
now they're going in a different direction.
right.
So just an encouragement to you church leaders. If you're watching this, I don't know if you are, but if you're watching this as a church leader, and I'm going to say this delicately, be secure enough
Mm,
in God's sovereignty for your ministry that he will bring someone else up and
yeah,
he will raise someone else up to continue his vision that he's imparted to you. Okay, that's my leadership tangent because we all want a leader like that. We all want a
yeah,
leader who's going to empower us even to the point of maybe not working for them anymore. So,
yeah,
man, just super grateful that you got to have that experience. Okay,
yeah.
shifting gears a little bit, Adam, as you were thinking about making this change and you were applying to different jobs and applying to schools, were there any challenges that you encountered having a background in ministry as you were making this transition at all?
Yeah, I mean, I think I was a little bit, I mean, I'm a little lucky, I guess you could say, in that I came from an education. I have the degree. Um, and love it or hate it, everybody needs teachers. It's one of the professions that, you have a teaching degree, awesome. Like what time can you start? Like not really, that's not really the case. But you know what I mean? I think I was a little bit lucky to have that background already. But yeah, I mean it was a challenge for me because by the time I made that decision, um, I mean, I think I was looking, it was probably beginning of August, which, as we all know, school starts in August. So um, I'm in this space and place of, okay, I know I need a job. I know this is what I'm supposed to do next, but I'm too late. Like that was really where I was. For a teacher to get hired to teach when school starts in 2 weeks, like that's not happening. Most principals and most, district personnel, they've got people already hired last year for the next school year. So, immediately it turned into, okay, I finally feel the freedom to go do this. All right, cool. Now, what does this look like? So that was really a huge challenge in and of itself, was like, am I going to even be able to get a teaching job, like this school year? Maybe lucky. It could be December, like somebody's, you know, going out on maternity leave and they're going to take the second semester off, or, whatever, or somebody quits mid-year, retires mid-year. Like that was kind of the, hey, this is where you're at. This is what you need to look for. And I'm like, oh, okay. So really just kind of prayed and was like, all right, God, I know this is the next step you have for me. What's next? And so that was a huge challenge in and of itself. And I applied to quite a few teaching jobs that were still posted on the website, and all the local, places, and honestly got hardly any feedback because it was like, oh, you're too late, like, oh, we already have, everybody's hired, we don't need another teacher for this year, but we'd be open to talking to you for next school year. And so that was kind of like oh man, what am I going to do? And so, you know, blessed that I had a background. But funny story, my certificate actually, my teaching certificate actually expired. um, so come to find out, one school district was like, hey, we'd be open to talking with you. And I was like, okay. And then they're like, let's run your credential search or whatever. And they're like, hey, you're expired, right? And I was like, uh, didn't know it expired. Like I went and worked at a church for the past 3 years. It couldn't have expired, like, what do you mean? And so I actually ended up having to take a couple different credentialing tests again, for the second time, just to, whatever, certify to be a teacher. And so, got lucky, hadn't taken a test in 3 years. Obviously, did a ton of leadership development, all these things that you could talk through, and all these experiences, and, ministry background, leading a ministry of 500 kids on a Sunday, like I should be good, right? But no, that wasn't how it worked. So it was just so funny how everything worked out. So anyways, took the test, figured out, all right, you got it, passed, thank goodness, got lucky. And then a school district that I had a relationship with prior, they ended up saying, yeah, we'll take you on, created a position, totally the Lord, that worked for me. And then once that kind of lined up, from that point, I made a transition plan in the ministry that I was in, and was able to step into teaching again. But yeah, I mean, just the crazy story and the headache and the stress of like, I don't even have a credential. Nobody's hiring, they don't care that I was a part of this huge ministry, that I led 500 people, was responsible for a ministry of 500 kids and over 150 volunteers. Like they didn't care about that, like at the time. They just wanted to know, do you have the credential and are you able to come teach, whatever. So obviously, once I got into it, a lot of those transferable skills played into it, and I was able to use those skills to do different things within the school, which was really cool to see some leadership positions open up from that. But yeah, it was just really interesting, the story of, I went from, all right, I know this is what I'm supposed to do, and then it was like roadblock, roadblock, roadblock. I was like, oh no, what is happening? So yeah, it's a funny story.
Yeah. And I think there's something to be said for your continued persistence, even when there are obstacles that could be spiritualized
Yeah.
to be, oh, well, my certificate ran out, so I'm not supposed to be doing this. That must be a sign from God. But that wasn't the case for you. And it was just, no, I just need to do the work.
Yeah.
I just
Yeah.
need to do the work. And there's so many things, and just kind of speaking broadly, if you're transitioning from ministry into a marketplace job, it's you're essentially transitioning into a new industry.
Yeah.
And you're going to have to do some work to learn some new skill,
Mm.
potentially even to get certified in a technology or in some other technical skill. And it's not necessarily a sign from God that you shouldn't do it. There's just work involved to kind of get up to speed to where you
Yeah.
need to be, even if, like Adam, you have all this leadership experience and you have what seems to be very relevant experience. It's
Yeah.
important to just understand there's more that goes into it than just being really successful in your ministry job and having lots of great experience.
Sure.
And that's just the reality. If someone was going from, I mean, think of the other way around, right? If someone wanted to go from some like big shot tech CEO to start a church and be the teaching pastor,
Mm.
people might scratch their heads if they're like, do you have a seminary degree? No,
Yeah.
you don't. I
Yeah.
just don't know if this is like the best, this is the right job for you right now. Now,
Right.
maybe if you went and got your MDiv, we
Yeah.
would have another conversation. So that's just kind of I think an interesting thing that you brought up there that's really helpful for everybody, Adam, is don't necessarily spiritualize the obstacle if it's actually might just be an extra step in the process.
Yeah.
It might just be just that. And then God provided for you because you were willing to take that step
Yeah.
and go through all that work. And you had this awesome position created for you.
Yeah.
Okay, but you didn't stop at just teaching. You were in school again,
Yeah.
both in school getting a degree, in school teaching again, but that's not where you are now. So give us like a quick overview of from that point to where you got to right now.
Yeah. So taught, got my degree, graduated, ended up, you know, getting a counseling job. So I got my degree, got my master's, and then ended up getting a counseling job. And I was like, okay, this is great. This is what I want to do. Got into it 2 years, 3 years in. I was like, okay, this is not what I want to do. Like,
Yeah,
okay, this is a lot different than what I thought it was going to be. I loved getting to connect. I loved getting to counsel, all these things, but was doing less and less of that. So really racked my brain and was like, okay, what is next? Like, what does this look like? And throughout my time, really, starting a family, had our first kid, really having more responsibility, found out we were pregnant with our second kid. It's like, oh, okay, we got to figure this out. So really just trying to figure out, okay, what can I do for my family? And so realize there's a central theme in my jobs. And I think that's been really helpful for me is like, it's not just necessarily a calling, it's like a theme, right? And so I've seen like, it is a calling. I'm called to work with people, right? That's my calling. I don't necessarily feel like I'm called to a place. I'm called to work with people. So for me, the theme was people this whole time. So people, people, people. So whether it's teaching, whether it's church, whether it's counseling, it's all this idea. So really, just really rallied around this theme and found HR as like, that's people of business world, right? HR, people of the business world. I feel like that's a great way to describe a lot of what HR does. It takes care of all the people aspect. And so ended up taking a job as a HR manager essentially, or HR director with no experience. My boss at the time was incredible. He connected the dots, saw the theme, saw that I could add value, saw the transferable skills, and it was incredible to work and learn from a dynamic leader like that. And then ultimately led me to continue to where I am now, which is continuing to work with people, but it's recruiting. And so I'm getting to recruit for an organization that helps people, which is really awesome. and provides all these business solutions to lots and lots of people, but also I'm getting to help connect again with people and counsel them with next steps in their careers. So recruiting has been, I've landed in this recruiting space. It's been great, doing a lot of connecting with people. And so getting to kind of take all of these different skills and all of these different themes that I've seen in my life over 10 years now. And like, here we are putting it all together, and it's been awesome.
Yeah, man, I love that you took the time to sit back and think, what were the themes? Like, what are the through lines? What's the story that I can look back to what I was doing and see the theme in the story from leaving college and
Yeah.
teaching and being a basketball coach all the way through to HR director, HR manager type position, into recruiting, into talent acquisition. What you just said there is so important, that there's so much evidence, if you can look backwards through time, even if you have a full time in ministry. It's not like Adam, who went from teaching to church and multiple different positions in church, back to teaching, and then to then to counseling, and then to HR. It
Yeah.
doesn't have to be like that. It can be, what are all the little, even different things you led within your position in the
Yeah.
church, and what did you like and what did you not like, and let those be the through lines and let those be the themes. Man,
Yeah.
that's hugely helpful. Thank you for saying that, Adam.
Yeah, of course. And I think everybody, anybody that's listening, I think you can dissect your day to day and what you've done and all the, you know, opportunities you've had to serve in your ministry or whatever that looks like. And you can see that there's common themes that you've done, whether that's, talent development or recruiting or, you know, anybody that works in the ministry, I promise you have recruited at some point. Because you have recruited volunteers to join you on this mission. So yeah, I mean, I think there's so many different, aspects of what you've done in your career that would help set you up for whatever that next step is. And you just kind of have to take some time and do the work and figure out what it is. And so, yeah, I think,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, Adam, I got a couple more questions before we wrap up.
Sure.
But what I'd love to hear is more about that transition from counseling specifically into this HR business context, where for those who are watching who haven't done much in HR, it's actually very technical. It's very knowledge based. There's a lot of legal stuff that goes into that. There's a lot of processes in HR. There's a lot of thinking through what you can say, what you can't say, who you can hire, who you
Yeah.
maybe shouldn't hire. And there's just a lot that goes into it that's very different from the counseling profession. So,
Sure.
and even the counseling profession is probably closer to vocational ministry than
Yeah.
maybe something else would be. So walk me through that transition a little bit. You said someone saw the connection and took a chance on you. Walk me through how that transition happened a little bit, because I think that's the transition that maybe a lot of people will want to experience, is
Sure.
going from that kind of role into the business context.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it was very how do I say, difficult to break in. And I think that might be the context that a lot of people are in right now, is like, I've applied to 500 jobs in the past year, and like, and I can
Hate it.
empathize with that, because I didn't apply to 500, but I was trying to knock down as many doors. I was, I mean, anytime something came on LinkedIn, I was like, apply. It's like, is that right? Is that wrong? I was in this intern. I was like, I don't know what to do. And so really, that's when I stopped and said, okay, enough of that. Like, that's not gonna help, right? Like, just mass applying to everything is not going to help me at this time when I'm looking. So that's when I really step back. Okay, what are these themes? What are these common things that I've done throughout this whole time? And how can I really market that? And so really took this idea of leadership development through my time in ministry to counseling and working with people and working with all different, stakeholders or shareholders, whatever you call it, stakeholders, I guess. But like having to work with as a school counselor, I'm working with the administration of the building. I'm working with parents. I'm working with students. I'm working with teachers. I'm working with outside community members. I'm working with all these different people. How can I figure out all that experience? How can I make that seem like, hey, this is something you'd want to take a shot on, right? Like, and so really had to just do the work and say, okay, my resume is not going to just, it's not just because it says I was a teacher and school counselor, people aren't going to understand all the things that I've done. And so I really had to do the work and like update my resume and make sure that it like made sense. And so I probably had, and this, I'm sure that, you've probably said this to people that you've talked to, but I mean, I had like 7, 8, 9, 10 different versions of my resume, and you have to tailor it to make it make sense, like what one position that I may be interested in, and it says that like, I don't know, I can't even give you an example off the top of my head, but you know what I'm saying? Like you have to tailor it to make sense to what you're applying for. So you really got to do your homework. You really got to do the research. You really got to think, hey, what would a hiring manager, what would a recruiter, what would somebody in this organization think when they read my resume? And so as you're thinking through that, make sure you're tailoring it to what those people might be looking for, and what you think the big ideas could be that could at least catch their eye. Obviously, don't make stuff up, like don't lie, but you should definitely think through some ways that you can be creative with the wording and you can get help with that. I know, Todd, you do amazing work and they can ask you for help, anytime they want. But I think that was a big thing for me. And then ultimately networking is a big part of it. I reached out to a lot of people that I knew. Was like, hey, I'm looking to go into the business world. You got any, anybody, you think anything that would fit, my background, here's what I'm looking for. And at that point I had kind of landed on like an HR type, I was like, I think HR makes most sense for me. But I was open to other ideas, I was open to whatever. So yeah, I think that was kind of the big idea was like, all right, network, see who I know, see if they have anything. And that's ended up ultimately how I got the position out of the counseling into the business world, was just from a networking thing.
Yeah. And guys, this is coming from someone who is a recruiter. He made the transition you're trying to make, and now he's a recruiter. So this isn't just this is just his one-off experience, and this is like, oh, good for Adam. Like this is what he does for a job. And I'll just kind of add what I tell clients all the time is there's 3 things that you need to do if you want to make this transition. And the first is to get clarity on the type of job you want, which is what you did. You said, okay, I look at all this stuff coming together and I think it's HR. You got to get clarity on that. And then we call it developing an attractive candidate presence, but it really is tailoring your online and offline presence specifically towards the types of jobs so that it actually makes sense to the recruiters who are reading your resume. Because Adam, you as a recruiter know, if you're looking through LinkedIn and you're searching for someone for a specific job, not only are you, if a resume doesn't line up with the specific job you're looking for, like that doesn't really make sense. But if your profile isn't right, you're not even going to find it.
Yeah.
Because it's not using the right stuff. So you have to cultivate that attractive candidate presence. And then the third thing we say is you have to have a predictable process to get interviews. And that only comes through your network. It only comes through the people who can actually go help you get interviews, because the easy apply button is easy, but it's not really your friend.
Yeah.
let's just be honest there. It's not really your friend.
Sure.
So that's such gold, your story, because that's exactly how I would tell someone else to do it, is to do what you did. So I love that. So last question for you, Adam, before we shut this down. What is your number one piece of advice for someone who's looking to make the transition from ministry into a marketplace job?
Hmm, that's a great question. Yeah, I think, yeah. I think for you, you've got to be at peace with the decision that you're making. I think for me, you know, I kind of just kept leaning on, this idea that my work is not for man, but it's for God, and Colossians 3:23, right? So like I was just I think I just had to get over that fear and that anxiety and really just realize that, hey, like I don't have anything to prove here. Like, if this is what I feel like is my next step, then and I feel like God has affirmed it and I've sought the wise counsel and it's what I need, it's what I think I'm at peace with. I think that's just what you have to do. You have to make that decision and be okay with it. And you may hurt some feelings. You may, quote unquote, let some people down. But at the end of the day, you weren't doing ministry for those people necessarily anyways, right? You're doing it for God, right? And so I think
Yeah, that's
that's
good.
that's just one of those things that you got to be willing to wrestle through and be okay wrestling through those emotions and just know that, you know, like I said, it's not about you. I think that was the big thing I learned, and I realized really quickly it wasn't about me. So I think understanding that and really just being okay with that is something that I think once you get it okay in your heart and once you feel like it's a good spot, then you're going to be able to take the necessary steps to get where you want to be.
And so great. Got to be at peace in here before you can move forward and engage peacefully in the
Yeah,
world
yeah.
with those big decisions. Awesome. It's been fun working together, Adam. Really excited for where you are right now and
Thanks,
the
man.
journey that God continues to have you on. So thanks so much for your time. This has been an awesome conversation. So many great things here. And be on the lookout for the next one because we'll have a lot more coming your way. Adam, grateful for you, bro. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Todd. Talk to you later, man. Bye.